Hi guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. I hope you're having a wonderful start of your month. Now, I'm coming into this month a little bit late with my wrap up of January and February, but I am in fact doing this year combined wrap ups of 2 months rather than 1 month each, just to make it a little bit easier on me with how busy my life is at the moment. So during the months of January and February, I read a total of 14 books. In January, I read 9, and in February, I read 5. So I started the year off really decently well in January, and I had a little bit of a down slump in February, which means that I was having trouble picking up books that I otherwise would have wanted to pick up. Over the course of the 2 months, I read a total of 5,981 pages in those 14 books, and they all came out as an average rating of 3.4 stars overall. So that is a pretty good average star rating to start off my year. I am hoping to get my average star rating above 3.5. So far it's 3.4, and that's actually pretty good for me. I've had some good books this past 2 months and some bad books. So let's get stuck into what books I read in the months of January and February this year. So we're starting off with the first book of January, which was A Tongue So Sweet and Deadly by Sophia St. Germain. I rated this book 3 stars. So essentially this book is following our main character, who is half fae, and she has the ability that when she makes eye contact with someone, she can make them do whatever she says. And 5 years prior to the events of the novel, she had been imprisoned in the Fae King's prison, and to get out of that, she made a blood oath with the king to get out of the prison, and now she's sort of living in the human continent. But at the start of this book, the king comes over and says that he wants a favor, and he basically wants her to infiltrate the human elections to try and be a candidate to get some secrets and figure out whether the humans have anything to do with what's happening in the Fae Kingdom at the moment. And in doing this, she'll be granted full freedom from her blood oath. But what happens when the secrets begin to unravel? This is definitely a different approach into a fantasy novel than I've ever read before. I'm used to the main characters sort of being in certain settings, and having this one be surrounded with an election and her be basically running for the election to get out of this blood oath. It was really interesting to go into, but unfortunately I could very clearly see the framework from other fantasy books in there, especially the fact that we had basically a Temu version of Rowan Whitethorn just sitting dead center in this book. When I finished this book, I was initially ready and willing to continue with the series, but I did in fact try to read the second one and I just couldn't get into it. It just doesn't have the things that it needs to capture me fully. Yes, it ended on a cliffhanger. Yes, the ending is going to be really fascinating and make you want to move forward in books, otherwise it wouldn't be a good series that people liked. But the problem is I just don't think it captured me enough to make me care about what was going to happen and care about the characters themselves. Like, I got 5 chapters into the second one and I was like, no, I just won't continue. I don't think it's for me. And that's after rating the first one 3 stars. So 3 stars isn't a bad rating whatsoever. It's actually like pretty good for what it is. But ultimately, I just think this book didn't have the sort of hook that I needed to make me care to continue. And the way that this one, the first one, sort of had drawn out until we got to the high stakes, it drew out so slowly. I just didn't want to go through that again before we got to the high stakes feeling that I was so wanting to find. So yes, unfortunately this was a 3 star and I won't be continuing the series, but it doesn't mean that I don't recommend the book, because just because a book isn't for me doesn't mean it's not going to be for you. This is quite a popular series and people are loving it. So if you like a story that's very political and is a little bit lower stakes until you get to the end and it's a slow burn out, I think you're going to enjoy this. There is a little bit of love triangle-ness in it, but I wasn't on board with it, but you might be. Like, that's the sort of book this is. It's not going to be for everyone, but some people may really, really enjoy this book. It just wasn't for me. The next book I read was The Possession of Alba Diaz by Isabel Canis. I think that's how you pronounce it. I am not good with pronunciations, especially when there's accents on it. I rated this book 4.5 stars. This is essentially following Alba Diaz, and there's a plague that hits her hometown and she's forced to move away to where her fiance lives. And where this place is, his family owns a silver mine, and she goes in there And when she comes back out, she starts to experience strange things and sort of feels something lurking beneath her skin. And only one person in this book seems to notice her changing, and that person just happens to be her fiance's cousin. I'm still not quite sure how she did it, but this author really swept me into this book, so I felt like I was witnessing it for myself. The fight for autonomy over your body and mixing it with possession and a fight for love was just undeniably exquisite. It was just beautiful. It has elements of exploring patriarchy and colonialism, as well as toxic families, the Catholic Church, and revenge. The atmosphere is purely gothic and dark, yet the setting was somehow vibrant and gloomy at the same time. It's hard to explain exactly what I was feeling and experiencing when reading this book. The possession scenes were believable and creepy, and her fight for survival essentially grabs you by the throat. And I feel that the experience that I had with this book was solely thanks to the author's lyrical writing, and I fear no one else could have written it the same way. Her writing was just beautiful, and having it in an historical setting, I think that's why I enjoyed it so much. I think I'm enjoying horror that has real life historical elements, which is strange to me because when I approach fantasy, I don't want it to have real life elements. But when it comes to horror, I'm really searching for the real life elements and to make me want to be immersed into it properly. So if you're a fan of historical horror and epic love stories, I think you should definitely consider this book. This was a really great time for me. I think the only reason it didn't reach a 5 is because I was having a little bit of trouble with certain characters in it, but not the main characters. The main characters were great. I think honestly the trouble I was having was because I was listening to the audiobook and not actually reading the physical book. And I think if I read the physical book, unfortunately, I would have enjoyed it better. But yes, ultimately it was a 4.5 stars for me, which is still really, really good. And I really just want heaps of people to read this because I really, really enjoyed this book and I think it was fantastic for what it was. The next book I read was The Salt Grows Heavy by Cassandra Cobb, which I rated 3.5 stars. So this was essentially the horror version of The Little Mermaid, but add a witch doctor and make it an epic love story. The writing of this one was so beautiful and descriptive that even with the most grotesque part, you really see the beauty behind it and the beauty that the character sees in these parts. I can't say too much about it because it is quite a short book, but I really did enjoy it a lot more than I thought I would, especially with people eating people. But, you know, this, with the most literal sense of the term, is about taking back your body. Again, another book about bodily autonomy and taking back yourself. And also finding this sort of epic love that takes 400 years to get back. I just really enjoyed it, and it was a really interesting take on The Little Mermaid. If I'm being honest, I actually liked this better than any other Little Mermaid retelling I've read so far. And I don't know whether it's because it's the horror aspect and it's not quite what you expect when you're going into it. And I just really loved it and I highly recommend it as well. Again, 3.5 stars is a really good rating, but sometimes things just don't connect fully with me. And it's very hard to get me to connect to a book that is so short, unfortunately. But I did really enjoy it and I will, in fact, be reading more of her books. It just takes a lot more concentration with her writing because it is so lyrical. The next book I read was Shield of Sparrows by Devney Perry. I rated this book 4 stars. So this is set in a world where the gods essentially sent monsters to remind the mortals to kneel. And our main character, Odessa, is the second-born daughter of the king of Quentis. She doesn't expect to do much with her life. She's betrothed to the head of her father's guard, and she doesn't expect much. Like, her sister's the one that's been training to be married off in this ancient treaty marriage with this other kingdom. And she's been training for this her whole life to essentially find out secrets from this kingdom. But what happens when the prince comes in and picks Odessa instead of the princess who has been training for this, and now she has to find the secrets of this kingdom when she goes in and infiltrates it. This world was so good to me. The only reason it lost stars was purely because of the character herself. The monsters were so vivid and visceral that I could see them. I could feel the heat of their breath on my heels as if I was running away from them. I could imagine them so perfectly because they aren't creatures that are what you see now, but they're like an amalgamation of them. So they've got a wolf, but it's not quite a wolf. It's different. And they've got a bear, but it's not quite a bear. It has spikes on its back. And I just really loved how vivid those descriptions were, and the world was vivid and everything. It just fell a little bit flat on the character for me, the main character especially. The love interest not so much. I actually really liked where he was going. I liked where other side characters were going. I liked that this book wasn't afraid to kill characters off. I think that was what made it have more shock factor and what made me keep paying attention, because you don't know who's going to survive at the end of it. But the main character herself was just a little bit lackluster for me in her personality. It was also the sort of book where the info dumping was happening via her questions. So she had such incessant questions that she'd ask over and over again just so we could get information about the world building. And I am the sort of person that wants to be shown plot points and wants to be shown world building and wants to be shown the secrets. I don't want her questions to be the crutch that we're relying on to find out that information, and unfortunately that's what this did for me, which unfortunately is why I didn't like the main character as much and why that star came off at the end. It had such high hopes from me to be a 5-star read, and it could have been if that wasn't such a crutch for the info dumping. But in saying that, after reading that and experiencing that, I do want to read the next book. It comes out on April 7th. It's on my calendar. I'm going to buy it and read it straight away. Without a doubt, I will drop everything to read that book because the rest of the book was so damn good. If you want monsters and you want them to be vivid and literally in front of you, I highly recommend this book. If you can look past the info dumping being in the incessant questions, that's fine. You'll be fine. Honestly, the monsters saved this book, and I'm so excited to see where it goes from here. And I'm hoping that now that we've got a fair amount of info dumping out of the way, I'm hoping that she doesn't ask as many questions, but who knows. So that is Shilda Sparrows, and I actually really thought that was a fantastic read for what it was and what I was expecting. The next book I read was Victorian Psycho by Virginia Fato. I rated this one 2 stars. So this is basically following Winifred Notty, the new governess of Enza House, which is where the Pounds family resides. And she essentially does her very best to behave herself and act normally, but slowly her depraved psychotic side comes out. Now this one, unfortunately, just did not hit for me. There was an amazing amount of plot holes. The only reason it got a 2 stars is because it ended exactly how I wanted it to end. The plot holes were so massive. She got away with so much, and I don't know how she got away with so much. There were scenes where a lot of blood was spilt, but somehow people didn't see that. There was a scene where a baby was swapped, and apparently people didn't notice, even though the baby was very much different to the baby she swapped it with. I don't know. There's certain things that happen in this that you've got to suspend your disbelief a little bit. And as much as I love a good unhinged main character, I could not get behind this character. There were scenes that I was like, oh my god, how could she have thought of that? And then the way she covered them up, or the way it ended, just didn't make sense for the people around her, I guess. I don't know how she hit it all. Ultimately, it just didn't make sense in that respect. It ended the way I wanted it to. That was about it. So yeah, 2 stars. And that's a very just 2 stars. It almost wasn't that rating at all. But, you know, it could be for someone else. If you're not going to take the book too seriously, it's great. But yeah, unfortunately, I am at the point in my life where I take books too seriously, and it's to the detriment of my ratings, unfortunately. The next book I read was Throne of the Fallen by Kerri Maniscalco, which I rated 4 stars. And this is basically following Prince Envy, who is trying to win this game to save his court. And in doing so, he has to sort of acquire a piece of art from our other main character, Camilla, as a part of this game. In him doing that, he sort of sucks them both back into the underworld to continue the game and finish it once and for all and hopefully save his kingdom. But at the same time, they have to avoid the growing affection for each other because he is so afraid of connecting like that with someone again. I think that this is one of those times where I love this author. I love this sort of universe that we're in. This was a 5-star prediction. I felt that it didn't reach the 5-star for me because I lost a certain connection. I understand we had a slow burn. I understand the connection was unmistakable, but I wanted to feel more. I wanted to feel in depth in their relationship and their characters more, and there was something that just didn't let me feel that. Like, I didn't expect the yearning, but I did love the yearning. It's just something was missing, and I can't quite put my finger on it. But that's, again, coming from someone who is having trouble getting higher ratings at the moment, because I think I might be getting a bit fussy. Things are turning out the same and they're predictable. It could also be the games. The games element might be what's done it for me. It has to be a certain type of approach to a game to make me care. I think I was getting bored with some of the things they were doing in line with the game, and I wanted more of them. But yeah, no, the writing, fantastic. I love her writing. It's great. I'm just hoping that more of the books in this series get better and better. Like, 4 stars is nothing to shy about, but I just wanted a little bit more of the romance rather than the games, and it could just be my personal preference with the game elements sometimes. The next book I read was Wild Dark Shore by Charlotte McConaughey, and I rated this one 4 stars as well. So this is set on a remote island between Australia and Antarctica, like the bottom of Australia, closer to Antarctica, and we're following, like, there's this family who basically caretake a seed bank on this island. And the ocean is rising, so they're the only ones left on this island preparing to get everything off on a boat later on. And then a woman washes up on the shore and they've got to take care of her, but she's sort of keeping a secret of her own. I feel that I love books that have such a vivid sort of description of nature, especially when we're looking at the Australian environment. And when we go into detail about that and how, even though nature in Australia seems fragile at first, they have instinctual ways on survival. And to read that and connect it with the human experience was actually really, really enticing for me to keep reading and keep paying attention. And then you have a mystery thriller aspect onto it as well, that you're not sure what's happening. She sort of makes you somehow connect to all the characters and yet be suspicious of every single one of them. So it's like beautiful and intense, yet just unexpectedly emotional. I didn't expect to cry the way I did. I ugly cried on camera in that video. It was horrible, but it just unexpectedly wrecked me. And I fear that I'm still not okay after that, and feel I'm going to be chasing that feeling. And hopefully I can find it in her other 2 books that I've seen that she's written that seems similar. Oh my God, that book just took me out at the knees, and I'm not okay still. And it's been a month. So I highly recommend, if you're into the sort of breaking down of nature and family. I just had a good time. There's definitely some weird parts about it, but I sort of embraced those weird parts and just, again, had a good time. So yeah, that was Wild Dark Shore. The next book I read was The Wolf King, and I also read the sequel, The Night Prince, in February, so I'm going to combine them in this review. So I rated The Wolf King 3.5 stars and The Night Prince ended up being a 3 stars. So in The Wolf King, it's sort of following this princess, and she is betrothed, again, same concept as other books I read these past 2 months, but she's betrothed to a very dangerous man. And she's been sort of forced into this marriage, and she's expected to just follow the rules and just do what she's told. And she gets kidnapped by one of the werewolves, or one of the werewolf leaders, or alphas, as we like to call them. And she's sort of taken into this world and essentially saved from her life as it is. And she now has to sort of live in the werewolf area. She acknowledges that she's been taken to get something for a trade, but the person who took her is starting to find a connection with her and doesn't necessarily want to trade her for this thing, and is trying to find his way out of it all along the way. It's a love triangle. You fall in love with this Scottish guy, and then you fall in love a little bit with the dark and broody guy in the corner. So the Scottish guy is more of a golden retriever. He's protective, but also cuddly at the same time. And in the first book, I really embraced the love triangle because I couldn't pick between each of them. I love my dark and broody, but also I love my golden retriever. I just couldn't figure it out. It was bingeable and addicting, and it was just so good. Unfortunately, when we went into the Night Prince, the Scottish man became overbearing and controlling, and I just didn't agree with the way that he was treating her, and I couldn't understand why she was so behind him after she'd embraced so many things about herself and her individuality and just her independence. There was a moment where she was pleading for control. She wanted to control over a situation, and he said, "No, I need control. It's a wolf thing." Over and over again it happens, and I have issues with men controlling women in books. And when you're telling me that it's meant to still be a love interest, I'm not behind it. And when we have the question at the end, which is who should you be with and who do you need to be with, I didn't agree with that argument at all, because the who she needs to be with is who I want her with. Because the other one, he lost all my respect to this second book. It just didn't work out. I am in fact going to continue because the third one's coming out this year and I'm very excited for it. I just hope that she gets a backbone and she just says stuff men completely and does her own thing. I don't care if she just puts off the actual love interest that I love to the side. I just want her to fight for herself. And that's what was missing in the second book. She just wasn't fighting for herself. And I understand it in the context of her journey, but there were times that I just wanted to shake her and go, wake up. As much as I loved the first book, the second book just wasn't it for me. The ending definitely saved it. And I'm very excited to go into the third book of this series. The next book I read was the sequel to Spark of the Everflame, which was Glow of the Everflame by Penn Cole. And I rated this one a 4 stars. So this is the sequel for Spark of the Everflame, like I said. And Spark of the Everflame is basically following Deanne Bellator, and she is a mortal, living in the mortal sort of area of this kingdom. And then you have Descended, who have power, and they're descended from the gods, essentially. Her mother is missing, and she's been searching for answers since. She's also a healer, and so she sort of becomes the palace healer and tries to find out more about how her mother goes missing. Glow of the Everflame, for me, was definitely a full step up from the first book. The first book was very info dumpy. It was very I could tell that her love interest throughout the book wasn't going to be the end game. Like, there were certain things about it that weren't fantastic, and I acknowledged that it was going to become something better. And oh my god, did this book step it up. I was entranced. I couldn't put the book down. It was just capturing me so deeply. I love the banter. I love everything that it built on the initial book, and I'm so glad that I knew it was going to get better and I continued, because that's exactly what it has been doing. The only thing bringing it down slightly is our main character because she is so naively trusting someone throughout this whole book that I'm just screaming at her like, he can't be trusted. What are you doing? I have no idea what half of her things that she was deciding to do through this book were, and I was screaming at her, and I hope that what happened at the end made her realize that person wasn't a great person, but who knows? Like, there's a third book out and we're still waiting for the fourth book. I believe it has been years. But oh my god, the main love interest that's going to be endgame, I feel it. He is perfection. He is everything she needs. She just needs to be shaken a bit to see it and not feel guilty about feeling that, because clearly he's the one. Clearly he's gonna be a soulmate. I'm sorry, I'm going on a tangent here. Anyway, this book was really good, really stepped it up, and I am excited to continue it on. I buddy read this with some friends and we couldn't stop talking about it the whole time. We were having such a great time. Like I said, the only reason that the rating got brought down is because the character was pissing me off with some of the decisions she was making and how naive she was making them and how dumb some of her decisions were. and how dumb she was for trusting certain people. But I do sort of like how it ended mysteriously, so you don't know how it's going to go from here. And that to me was really interesting and really gave it a cliffhanger that made me want to continue straight away. Only reason I haven't is because I need to prioritize other books first, but I will come back to this, don't you worry. The next book I read was The Last Name Sarah by Kristen Ciccarelli, which I rated 3 stars. Now, this book is following a main character, Asha, who's a dragon slayer, and she is also classed as the Iskari. She's really deadly, ferocious dragon slayer, and she's betrothed to her father's commandant. He's cruel, and she doesn't want to be betrothed to him, but it's basically a betrothal to clear her name. But her father says if she kills the most powerful dragon, she will be able to get out of this marriage if she brings back its head. But what happens when she starts to find out the secrets about her past and her present? This book was saved for me solely by the fact that I read it with the audiobook and the physical book at the same time. If I didn't have that, I wouldn't have enjoyed it as much. It just was too young in the writing for me, unfortunately, and I just wasn't able to connect to the character as much as I would like to. I wanted more dragons, I wanted more plot, I wanted more depth to the characters, and I just wasn't getting it. And it could be the younger writing and me not vibing with it, but I know for a fact that she's still writing young adult books that I am enjoying. So this series just wasn't for me at the end of it and just landed in the middle for me. So unfortunately, it just wasn't the best book for me and my experience. I recommend it if you're younger and you have a little more of an attention span than I do. Unfortunately, I just had a lot of trouble with it, and the audiobook is the sole reason why I got through that book. And I am unhauling it to take it to a better home so that someone else might enjoy it more than I did. I think I've just realized the camera is wonky, but we're embracing it now, so who cares? Okay, so the next book I read in February was The Unmaking of June Farrow by Adrienne Young, and I rated this one 4.5 stars. So this is basically following a family of women, and the women in this family, there's like a curse against their family. They basically all go insane. Like a madness takes over their lives. And June Farrow has just said goodbye to her grandmother, and she's finding that she is getting symptoms of this madness as well. And this door keeps appearing to her, and sort of what happens when she decides to go through this door, and will she be able to stop the curse that's running in her bloodline? When I finished this one, I felt like I traveled to a different place and time, and it was really down to the writing being so beautiful and lyrical. It built such an atmospheric, vivid image that captured me. And honestly, my attention was wrapped from chapter 1. I couldn't stop thinking about the book when I put it down, and I couldn't stop reading it when I had it in my hands. I think the only thing that could have made it better is more of a connection to me, and it's a me problem. Don't you worry, it is a me problem. I wanted more of an emotional connection. I wanted to be in tears. I wanted to be laughing with them. I just wanted a little bit more of that connection to make me care a little more, because the book was amazing. It was written beautifully. It was laid out beautifully. I just expected to be emotionally connected a bit more, and I wasn't. I really enjoyed the concepts it approached, and it was really interesting that not all of the plot twists were predictable. I do ultimately think this is one of those authors that I may never get sick of no matter what she writes, and that is ultimately the feeling that I've been chasing and that we all chase when we're reading a book. We want an author that we can keep coming back to no matter what, and trust that we're going to have a great time. So yeah, as much as it lost a half star for me wanting to connect a little bit better, I did connect to it enough that I really, really enjoyed it, and it was really, really beautiful, and I highly recommend to anyone who wants to read that sort of book. The last 2 books that I read for January and February were Wolf E and Dove by Paisley Hope. Wolf E got a 3 stars and Dove got a 2.5 stars. So these are following a motorcycle club. The first one's following the president, Gabrielle, and Brinley and their relationship. The second one's following Sean and Layla and their relationship. Now, the first one was definitely a lot darker than the second one, in my opinion. It hit the dark elements that you want in a dark romance. It hit the danger and the adrenaline that you needed for it. Half the spice scenes were just not for me. Again, I said in a video that I read this, there was a whole lot of running, and I am not someone that likes to run. And if I read about people being told to run and they have to run for pleasure, I just don't understand it. But that's just a me problem again. That is me. But the second one, Dove, it didn't hit the dark romance side of it. It didn't feel like it. It just felt like touch her and die energy, but not quite dark romance, what you expect from a dark romance. It didn't hit the same. The spice scenes were a lot better, but also in saying that, they lacked the connection that I thought that I got in the first book, and I didn't receive that in the second book. So not as good as the first book, not the most amazing books that I've read by Paisley Hope, but also they're not bad. Dove was on the cusp of being bad because the whole premise was given away in the prologue. The whole ending was given away in the prologue, so nothing shocked me. And I like to be a little bit shocked in books. I want something to come out of it, which the first one did perfectly, but the second one just didn't hit. I hope the third one is better. But her cowboy romances for me hit a lot better than these have. They line up a little bit with Wolfie, but not so much Dove. And like, I read her books for a happy fun time. I'm not reading her books for serious, mind-boggling, perfect literary genius. I'm reading it for a great time. And ultimately I had a great time in the first one. The second one just didn't hit. There was something that just wasn't connecting enough for me. And that's okay. I'm sure that the next one's going to be better because it is following the president of a rival club and one of the characters that has been brought up in the last two books, which I can't actually say who it is because that would be a spoiler. So yes, they are all the books that I read in January and February. As you can see, I have yet to find a 5-star this year. We had a couple that were very close to a 5-star, some 4.5s that just didn't cut it for me. I've also decided this year that I'm not doing quarter ratings again. Last year, not doing quarter ratings really made me refine my ratings better, and I am not going to do quarter ratings anymore at all. I need to keep it at half ratings to get my thoughts concise and clear, because quarter ratings are just too dangerous. You start getting into 0.75s and 0.25s and you can't stop. So I've just totally deleted them out of my rating system. So then hopefully I'm better at getting a 5-star. It has also made me a little bit more picky about getting a 5-star. So I'm hoping for one. At this rate, it has been 46 books without a 5-star, and I am craving the 5-star feeling so bad, and I'm hoping I get it in the next 2 months, but so far it hasn't happened. But they are all the books that I did read in January and February to start off my year, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. I hope I didn't talk too much. I'm trying to keep these videos a little more clear and concise with each book I'm talking about, not ranting and raving the whole time. And I have found that I am lasting longer on my SD card without having to change it in between. So that's a good thing. I hope you had a wonderful start of your year as well, in your reading year. And going into March, I hope your month is going well. But until the next video, I'm going to be here trying to get my reading a little bit better for the next 2 months. So I'll see you then. Bye.